to today's webinar about traditional ecological knowledge. My name is BC Echohawk, and I'm a member of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma. On behalf of the Native Connections team and contracting officer representatives Maureen Madison and Jan Dunbar Cooper, thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sarah Pearson to get us started and share a little more about today's topic. Sarah?
Thank you, BC. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on traditional ecological knowledge connecting to spirit, land, and self. What a great topic. My name is Sarah Pearson, and I'm the Native Connections subject matter expert, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm being supported by two of our GTAs, Valerie Pingayak and Marie Schuyler Drever, as well as our IT guru, Mark Taylor. He's in the background, making everything work smoothly. Just an announcement before we get moving. Traditional Foods as Medicine is a project that we've had going for a while now, and we are looking for people to bring in more, or grantees to bring in more recipes. If you've got recipes on appetizers, soups, drinks, main courses, side dishes, please send them on to us. We're looking for more recipes to add to that Traditional Foods as Medicine document that we're creating this year. Everyone, please find the chat box. I see some of you have already found it, and type in your name and where you're calling in from. Please tell us if you're familiar with the traditional ecological knowledge concepts and if these practices are something that your program is considering these days. What we hope to do is share a little bit of knowledge with you today and inspire you to share some of the things that you may have been doing that maybe you didn't realize that they were traditional ecological knowledge practices. So if you're inspired from the conversation today, please open up your mic and ask to join the conversation. So today's objectives for the webinar are that the Native Connections programs we know are busy planning activities to reconnect Native youth to their culture and lands. Some programs are finding ways to rediscover forgotten knowledge of the ocean tides, for example, star constellations, plants, and healing salves. Traditional ecological knowledge is based on the relationship between people and the natural world. In today's webinar, peer presenters will share with you their personal understandings of and experiences with tech. They'll describe tech concepts and known impacts of those concepts. They'll provide examples of tech activities for Native youth they're using in their own communities, and they'll encourage your participation to share in your tech experiences. But we have a question for you. Let's move directly to our polling question, Mark. Before we get started, the speakers would like to hear from you. How familiar are you with the term tech or traditional ecological knowledge? Let's rank it from 1 that you've never heard from it, all the way up to 5 that you use it frequently in your Native Connections programming. Feel free to share any details that you have in the chat box. And I'll leave it up to my colleague Marie to share what she sees in the chat box.
Thank you, Sarah. We just have 5, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 4, 2, 1, 2.
Well, that kind of gives us a sense that there's not a whole lot of knowledge out there. Some people that have really good knowledge. And hopefully, like Manuel, and I think there was somebody else who had a 5 at the very beginning. Please feel free to come forward at any time to share your knowledge. We'd love to get you engaged in the conversation.
We have
All
a
right,
3.
Mark. Oh, okay, 3.
Yes.
All right, let's move forward, Mark. All right, now I want to introduce the panelists. We have Dana Kingfisher, Director of the All Nations Health Center. We have Melanie Stevens joining us, Program Director from Heritage and Culture at the Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis Reservation. Bessie Shorty is joining us. She's program manager of the Native Connections Yurok tribe. And Valerie Piniak will be sitting in. She's our GTA. She'll be filling in for Simeon John from Tuxuk Bay. At this time, I'm going to turn it over with the next slide, Mark, to Dana Kingfisher. Dana, the floor is yours.
Oki itamix kana Tony. Hello, I'm Dana. I'm Bikani and Ani from Montana, and I am living in the urban area. So I'm going to get us started. Traditional ecological knowledge is based on the idea that there's a relationship between people and the ecosystem, the natural world surrounding us. It includes the insight and wisdom of the seasons and the earth connecting us through the five senses. And then I'm just going to read off, I summed up what TEK means to me and the work that I do here in Missoula, Montana. Each individual tribe has their own unique spiritual connection to the land. It is through TEK that we can transfer knowledge to the next generation, just as our ancestors have done since time immemorial. TEK teachings show us how to walk along our landscapes in a respectful way. TEK also teaches us that in order to live a healthful and prosperous life, we must reciprocate to the land what the land has done for us. So as Indigenous culture, oh, go ahead. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to talk about the work that I do at All Nations Health Center. I am currently acting as a co-interim director at All Nations, but my work for the past 18 years has been working with youth and families in the urban area in Missoula, Montana. So our mission at All Nations is committed to providing a sustainable, healthy lives for Native people and the surrounding community through culturally based holistic care. And the departments that we have are medical, health promotions, behavioral health, prevention, and administration. And so in the next slides, I'm going to talk about the existing experiential learning opportunities that we provide, how we leverage resources, the partnerships that we have, and then our TEK series that we're in the 4th summer now doing. Next slide. So our existing learning opportunities, we try to integrate TEK in all parts of our programming. On the right on the top, you can see we are on some land outside of Missoula, some state land, and we're doing a Project Venture activity. We integrate Project Venture during the school year after school as a community-based programming. And so we're doing an activity. This is a weekend where we're out on a hiking trip. We provide for middle and high school year-round programming, which is really helpful when we're talking about TEK and helping the kids to, at whatever level they're at, connecting to the land. Buffalo harvesting, Sabbathberry gathering, soup and stories, summer youth and community camps, stories under the stars, and home gardening. So on the right, you'll see on the bottom left, we did a home gardening program during COVID where we built garden boxes, delivered soil and starter plants to our community members, or you could drive up to the medical clinic and we would just load you up. It was like a no contact type programming, and we continued to do that. This summer is our 4th year as well of providing that. The middle picture is June berries, Sabbathberries, Saskatoon berries, which is very popular in our area and is very crucial to some of our tribal ceremonies. And then on the right, there's traditional game playing at a youth conference that we did. We partnered with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, and those sticks are harvested from the land with our youth. Next slide. It's really important to leverage resources, especially when you're talking about Native Connections funding, because there are unallowable costs that we can't provide, things like food outside of a meeting, or it's like $3 per person. And so leveraging resources is really important to us. On the top, we were able to get snowshoes because we did an outing with the youth snowshoeing, and we were able to get snowshoes, the transportation, providing gas vouchers, providing the snowshoes themselves to our youth. And so it's really important for us to internally leverage resources as well as externally. And these are just all of the programs that we partner with that are listed that are internal grants and contracts that we have. And so we do a lot of internal partnering, and it's like a win-win because they have objectives and Native Connections have objectives. And so we're able to work together to provide this amazing programming. And the bottom picture is our annual berry picking. It's a secret spot on some state land outside of Missoula. Next slide. One of our partnerships, first and foremost is our cultural knowledge holders. Without our knowledge keepers, we would not be able to, walk along the landscape and identify plants and what, their medicinal purposes are, the indigenous language for them. We really rely heavily on our knowledge holders, young and old. So medicine plant gathering, Montana tribal languages and ceremony, public and federal land to gather different things, not just traditional games gathering, but medicines. And we have a great partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, U.S. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So it's really a great partnership. Montana tribes, we partner with Montana tribes to do the buffalo hunt. Blackfeet, Northern Cheyenne, CSKT, Confederated Salish Kootenai, they provide buffalo hair for our traditional games. And so it's really important to also support our youth to have that connection to their tribe, because in an urban setting, sometimes we can't bring those tribal values and teachings to the city. And so it's really important to have the connection to the tribes for our youth and families. Here in Montana, they provide equipment. We've been working with them for a long time. And of course, the University of Montana staff and students as mentors, as guiding, and also yeah. Next slide. Sorry about that. So we are in our 4th year of partnering with Dr. Rosalind Lapierre. She is awesome. She has been a great partner. She is the director of Sakyo Heritage, which is a website if you're interested. But we this year we are focusing on trees and the cultural significance. It's amazing. We love our partnership with Dr. Lapierre. We usually meet on campus at the Payne Family Native American Center for the space. And they have a ethnobotany garden. We are able to harvest sage and sweetgrass, and so we have a year-round partnership with the University of Montana. Fort Missoula, we've done berries and edible plant gathering. We've made indigenous drinks. We do a lot of things in the summertime. And we provide wellness toolkits. And each summer we're providing services to about 60 plus American Indian Alaska Native clients. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass it over to the next person. Melanie, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Dana.
Melanie. You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Melanie Stevens. I work with the Chehalis tribe in Oakville, Washington, and as part of the Native Connections grant, we do suicide prevention as well as working with our native plants that we harvest from the land as well as growing in our garden. I do weekly classes for the community to come in and show how to use those different plants, take them out, people out harvesting. And also I partnered with a local nursery this year that gave us starts to be able to give to community members, our elder center, and also for us to plant in our garden so that we'll be able to raise those and the kids can help me harvest them and be able to share them with the local elders and community this summer. So we're looking forward to that. Next slide, please. I break up my time into the seasons to work with the kids. We have, in spring, we did a scavenger hunt this year when the kids were on spring break, and I gave them a sheet that identified dandelions, elderflowers, stinging nettles, big leaf maples, cleavers, chickweed, Indian plum, and violets. And we went out on a nature walk to see how many of these different plants around our community center that we could find. And the kids were able to find them, identify them, and then be able to try them. So they would take the heads off the dandelions and break off the greens and eat the blossoms to see what they tasted like. The big leaf maple clusters that come out in the early spring, we showed them how they could harvest some of those and put them into salads. Same thing with cleavers, chickweed, Indian plum, and they got very excited to be able to say that they found them on their own so that they knew that these were first foods. And then I also take them into my classes during the spring months, and we show how to be able to use stinging nettles, excuse me, and the dandelions we put into a pesto, which is a huge hit, and I get constant requests for them. We also moved into adding it with a lemon balm. So those are a big plus, especially for the people when they come to class. They're very excited that they got to try something that maybe somebody didn't when we came. Next slide, please. Now, when we work into the garden, we're showing the different plants. We grow a lot of the herbs that we would harvest out in the wild. We want to be able to make them more sustainable. So we plant them into our garden beds. We have sage, we have lavender, we have mullein, lemon balm, all kinds of different herbs and plants that we grow along with the flowers that we use and harvest, the chamomile and the calendula, so that we can bring them in and I can show people how to make herbs, make teas from them. They can make salves with them. And unfortunately, right now at this time of the year here in Washington, salves are not our best friend because they are now liquid. They have become a lotion more than a balm. I have them at home and I went to use one the other day and it was like gone. It was like melted all over. This is a picture of Devil's Club that we go out and harvest. And we take the Devil's Club and we will strip the bark from it and grind it down and make a salve with it, or teas because of the medicinal properties of it. It's also a picture of the stinging nettles and a picture of a couple of our people that went out to harvest them. The stinging nettles are good to be used for teas, especially in the early spring because of allergies and things. They have antihistamines in them that make it very helpful to break it down. We had one time when we were doing the dandelion blossoms and we were drying them out a little bit and left them too long. And we were breaking apart the blossoms to use in a recipe, and some of them had gone to fluff, filled my nose, couldn't breathe, coughing, choking, and we had happened to do stinging nettles to blanch them. So I ran over to the pot and dumped out a full cup of the nettles water and drank that. And within 30 minutes, I was done. I was good. No more sneezing, no more itchy eyes. So I know firsthand that it works really well for everybody. Next slide, please. So in the summer, we harvest, we talk about the berries, we show the kids in the spring the different plants and what the flowers look like, so that as they go into summer and into fall, they can look for the different berries and see the transition through the year. I also allow them to taste a few of the blossoms because the blossoms are edible. And that way they can see how they taste. They can take them home if they're out or about. They can gather some and put them in their own salads at home, and then they get to see the berries and how they're coming. And this year with our temperatures, it's shown that our berries are ready a lot sooner than normal. Our Indian plum, when we went out on our walk, I was working in the garden just last week and saw that the Indian plum berries were already ready to go and they were ready to be picked, which is off a little bit. Usually they're more towards August. So we'll be able to share that with the kids as they start their summer program this year. So it's nice to be able to show the progress of the plants so the kids can identify them. throughout the season. Next, please. So as we transition into fall, the leaves change from the green to the bright, beautiful colors, and it's time for the fall harvest and preparing for winter. What we saw as elderberry flowers, we can now go in and identify where the elderberries are growing. And we always tell the kids that we wait until they get that first frost and they get almost like a white powdery look to them before they harvest them. And then we'll harvest them and show them how they can make it into elderberry syrup. This year we're going to try elderberry gummies and let them take them home to their parents so that they can use it either in a tea or a syrup to put it like over their ice cream or their pancakes. Burdock root in the fall, once the flowers have died off, it's good to pull those, the dandelion roots and Oregon grape roots to be able to harvest. And I always teach the kids that you only take a little, you don't take from the whole plant because you don't want to kill the plants. You want them to be able to continue growing. Same thing with the adults. Don't over harvest because you're not going to have some for later. I had an example of that. I had a person bring in a piece of devil's club for me because I wanted to make walking sticks. And the piece they brought me was over 6 feet long. And when I looked at it, they had harvested the plant down so that they had about a 4-foot root that they had pulled out of the ground with it. So I explained to them that they didn't want to do that because that's going to kill the plant and stunt the growth off of that basic grouping of the Devil's Club. But it's all a learning experience for a lot of people because they've never been out harvesting, so it's good to teach them the best way to use it. Next, please. So this is a nutrition guide that I use to show people the nutritional value for nettles, dandelion root, dandelion leaves, burdock root, and chickweed, just as an example, as compared to kale and spinach. And it's amazing the amount of vitamins and minerals that are in these wild plants that people will normally call weeds, when in fact they are more nutritious than most of the things that you buy in the grocery store. One of the things that's pretty amazing as far as nettles, when I tell people you can take the nettle powder and take 1 teaspoon and you're going to get about 36 grams or percentage for protein. So it's more protein than you can even get out of eating like a meat or whatever. So you can add that powder to your drinks, to your smoothies, or add them to eggs, or and get a protein that's healthy for you along with the vitamins that come with it. So I like to share this so that they have an idea of how important some of these plants are and how they can be for them. And next. And I want to say thank you. If any of you have questions or want to reach out to me, please feel free to email me or call me. I would be glad to discuss any of my classes or the things that I do with my community. And I would like to hand it over next to Betsy. Bessie, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Now Bessie Shorty, Keach Osh, Pulikla, Essie Nertner, Rekboy May we say Palaak. I'm the tribal court mediator currently. I did have the Native Connections program for 5 years, and I continue to do traditional ecological knowledge and mental wellness trainings and presentations in the Humboldt and Del Norte County area of Northern California. I work for Yurok Tribal Court. Next slide. So just to share a little bit of the area that I'm going to be taking you on, because we're going to go on a little gathering journey virtually. Yurok tribe is a federally recognized tribe in Northern California. You can see the arrow up there. We call ourselves Oth, which means the people, Hulikla for downriver people, Pechikla for upriver people, and Ner'ertner for coastal people. Next slide. So before we begin our trip, our gathering trip, I'd like you to reflect back on your earliest memory of being exposed to traditional ecological knowledge. So the ecological knowledge of when you were a child, like the smells, what you've seen, maybe you're walking with your parents and they identified a plant for you, or maybe they you were sitting outside and you felt the wind and you had somebody point out which way the wind was blowing and what that meant. That's traditional ecological knowledge. So try to bring that memory forward. Next slide. Oh, and that's a picture of our pepperwood nets. So right there. So where are you when you're reflecting back? Who's there with you? How are you physically, mentally, and spiritually? And how young are you? What's the earliest moment in your life that you remember? And Kaupe is a village on the coast of Northern California. Next slide. What senses did you experience when you're reflecting on that earliest memory? One of mine would be gathering seaweed, chegal, in the photo here, or nepui, the fish that I canned over here. These are some of the things I take my youth on to during my mentorship moments, to gather fish or process fish or gather seaweed. What did you smell? What did the air smell like? I see somebody post chatted fish camp. What did everybody sound like? What did the grown-ups sound like around you? Who did you see there? Next slide. So for sight, the location of the sunrise when it's time to gather, that's very significant for us here on the coast. Recognizing the smell of the ocean tells us the status of the ocean's health. There's a tide on the coast called red tide, and we're often taught not to gather during the red tide because we can get sick from the shellfish. Recognizing the sound of waves telling us when the tide is coming in or out. That's knowledge that's handed down to us. We're not born knowing things like that. We're taught when the tides are going in and out, how to identify when the tides are going in and out. If we're not able to recognize that, we're discouraged to go gather because it could be very dangerous. Identify when seaweed has been in the sun long, in the rain, or in the sand. Oftentimes we're taught, I guess, the way we gather, like my uncles taught me how to gather a lot, my grandma's little brothers, and they said, you're super cool if your seaweed doesn't have sand in it. So oftentimes you recognize by taste. It shows your skill on how your food is processed, how you gather, where you gather. And then touch, identify the temperature of the ocean and the health of the seaweed. Next slide. So one thing when we're teaching or guiding our youth in using traditional ecological knowledge in our activities with them or our mentorship with them, we want to remember how it develops them. So cognitively, cause and effect, how you gather impacts future growth. Language, gathering songs, how song focuses your mind and eyes to see, hear, and endure. A lot of tribes, I know with my tribe, we have gathering songs, we have paddling songs. And oftentimes, if we aren't singing our songs, maybe we don't see those shells or we don't see what we're gathering. But when we start singing those songs, we get our eyes are able to find them and locate what we're gathering. Social emotional development, self-identity, your role within your house, your village, and your tribe. When you're preparing to go gather and using your traditional ecological knowledge, it develops you socially because you see the interaction of your friends, your family. It develops you emotionally because you hear and witness the way they communicate around you and how they acknowledge you and what role you have. It also develops you emotionally because throughout your time you develop your skills. And so maybe as a little 4-year-old, you're just able to get your own bag or go get your own shoes or try to keep your own feet dry when you're gathering. But when you get older, there's my dog. But when you get older, you're able to advance. Maybe you're carrying tools. Maybe you're helping make tools. Maybe you're identifying which trail you're going to go on. Or maybe you're even passing down the knowledge that your elders taught you to the little ones. So small motor, hand and eye coordination, owning the way your hands speak for you. So when I work with youth who haven't implemented traditional ecological knowledge or been exposed to using it, their hands are awkward and they don't really trust their hands. And they're more hesitant in using tools or knives, and also hesitant in, well, like for instance, when we're gathering mussels on the side of the rocks in the ocean, it can hurt your hands. And so sometimes they'll choose to not even do it. And then large motor skills, balancing, and it builds your confidence, grace, and strength. Next slide. Oh, so that's it. So I just wanted to cover, I guess, the domains, the development of us physically when we're implementing traditional ecological knowledge, and also be mindful of using our five senses when we're engaging with the youth and their family and friends when we're, sharing our traditional ecological knowledge. I also had a gathering song I wanted to share. Sarah, I see your hand was up.
Bessie, I didn't want you to finish too early without sharing a thought that you shared with me earlier about the scent, the smell of the ocean. You said you need to understand the right scent of the correct scent of the seafood or the oysters or the clams that are beneath the sand. And that's something that you learn by being with your parents and walking along the shore and doing the clam digging. Or if you don't do it with them, you don't know the right scent of the tide coming in. Can you
Yes.
elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So we could read about traditional ecological knowledge in books, but to be there in real time with our people, we get familiar with the smell of it, also the way it feels. So sometimes what I've noticed throughout my time gathering on the ocean coast, the water smells kind of, I want to say like rotten but fishy when there's a red tide. There's also a red kind of foam, and it's also thicker and like slimy. And that's something you wouldn't know unless you're in real time right there. And it's also something a little kid wouldn't really notice unless one of their elders or somebody pointed it out. Like, now smell this. Do you smell it? Feel the water. So I guess that's something. Is that what you wanted me to share? Okay. Yeah, to just be aware of your environment and what's going on around you. Here on the coast, a lot of our traditional ecological knowledge has to do with the wind as well when we're on the river. One of the things that I learned early on was the wind comes upriver. It goes upriver from the ocean, and that would carry our canoes. When we would fish in our canoes upriver, we also would put sails on our redwood canoes, and we'd catch that wind going upriver. But in the early evening, the wind comes downriver. Now, I could verbally say that, but without the traditional ecological knowledge of knowing that smell, because you could smell it. You could smell the ocean wind coming in, and you can smell the inland wind coming down because it will smell like pepperwood and willow. It'll smell drier than it would on the coast, because on the coast where my village is from and where I fish in Requa, it's where the Klamath River meets the ocean. It smells like ferns and it smells real green. But when the wind comes from downriver, it smells like pepperwood and it smells like willow. It smells like drier, and it feels drier. So that's traditional ecological knowledge. And if I was to ride in a canoe, how to catch the wind going upriver, I would have to know that. So that's one of the things. I love to talk about traditional ecological knowledge. I know the impact that it does on people, young and old. And I hope all of you implement it. Walk loud, walk loud, walk loud.
I see your song.
Oh, my song. So here's the gathering song, and it's my song, so I own it. And if you remember it and retain it, you could sing it when you go gather. Here it goes. Let's see. Hi-yo, hello, hi-yo, hello, hi-yo, hello, hi-yo, hello, hi-yo, hello, hi-yo, hello. Each way. And now it's Val's turn.
Kuyano Bessie. So waka, Valerie Pingayawo, Chupiugo, Chuchtun Atkaka Pasok, Chivak Miungungo Dagom Fairbanks Aniwita Dunga. I'm standing in for Simeon John, the Native Connections Director for Nunak Gawiakamut or Tuksik Bay, a cohort 9 grantee, as he is out on subsistence leave, which is a norm here in Alaska for our grantees during this time. Nunak Gawiakamut was previously a cohort 3 grantee, and they were a sub-grantee under the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And through that work, they developed Kungazvik, which means toolbox, and an Indigenous intervention science model for Alaska Native communities. Mark? So in our Chipik Yupik culture, we were taught that in our Chipik Yupik culture, we were taught that when we return to our homeland, it is one of our traditional beliefs to eat a piece of the earth to help make our bodies immune to any sickness so that we can physically and spiritually readjust to our homeland. The relationship that we have with the land, our environment, and everything it provides is still an integral part of our lives today, especially as we continue to live in what most people consider harsh environments. We have to consciously, for our survival, safety for ourselves and others, very much rely more on our senses to help keep us safe. So we learned this from our elders, from our parents, our extended families, and they taught us by example as we grew up on the tundra. For example, when my dad taught us how to find drinking water on the tundra, it wasn't as simple as that. He walked us out into the tundra and he taught us the things to consider or to be aware of are what kind of plants are growing around this water. He taught us how to make sure that there were no poison water hemlocks around. He taught us to observe the water we were getting the land we were getting the water on. Is it high enough? Is it high enough from, excuse me. So he taught us to observe and to make sure the water was high enough from the lowland so that it wasn't contaminated by salt water. He asked us to observe whether or not it has moss around it. Is it clear? Is it cloudy? What does it smell like? Does it smell like mud? So you can imagine that sometimes when you're sent out to find water, we would come back and have to be sent out again because we gathered the wrong kind of water. But you can also imagine our relief that when we came back and brought back good water, how excited and relieved we were when we accomplished that task. Also, in general, much consideration is taken into harvesting plants. We learned which traditional plants are used for which ailments, what are edible, because some look similar. We were taught to look for the distinctions. We were taught to consider what does each smell like, and then we were also taught when the best time to harvest them were. So those are just two examples But I hope you're getting the sense that much consideration is taken into hunting and gathering activities than what meets the eye. Also, they affect us on a spiritual and physical level as well. So we stand on the belief that if you take care of the land will take care of you. One of the things that I wanted to also point out regarding this slide is that the Qungasvik website, on the Qungasvik website itself, TEK is integrated in all the traditional hunting and harvesting activities with the youth and elders, and they share that in activities such as seal hunting, whale hunting, ice fishing, and they also share lessons from the land. So I invite you to check that out. And we have the website listed in our resources at the end of the presentation. Mark? Now in urban communities, we encourage, because youth have limited access to cultural activities, that this knowledge, this traditional knowledge, has to be shared and passed on intentionally. The youth may only be exposed to traditional knowledge through a program or a class or a culture camp, and sharing this historical knowledge and why it's still relevant today are things they will carry with them as they continue to navigate through this life. In our communities, we're always prepping for the next subsistence or gathering season. We consider what's being gathered right now, what are the tools we need, how should we dress, how can I keep what I hunt and gather stored until I'm ready to store them from home, who can help me, what to look for, what something feels like, what something smells like, and that preparation in itself will be extremely helpful, again, as they navigate through everyday life and even work. And for further information, please contact Simi and John or reach out to myself so that I can connect you to. He's a Native Connections Director for Nunakmiut, and I'm their GTA. And Quiana, thank you for being with us today.
Well, we went through 4 wonderful presentations. Thank you, ladies. That was well received. I would hope that Dana and Bessie and Melanie and Val and even Allison and Marie, if you come off mute and join in a panel discussion just to kind of kick us off, and I invite participants to also think about this. We've heard a lot of things about traditional ecological knowledge. This is anything from a simple weed walk, making a salve, all the way up to like a good new journey that involves integrates language and a journey away from home, or planning the whole year prep that could be a traditional ecological knowledge project. With the question here, how can traditional ecological knowledge or tech support youth in making those native connections? How can that program help them, and how does tech work to help Native youth development in the Native Connections program?
I'm going to share for a second, please. I think that the tech knowledge is a way of bridging the knowledge of our elders and past to the future, so that our youth can be able to use the plants and support the environment the way that our ancestors have. It also can teach them how to use nature as a way of calming, as a way of gathering food sources and being respectful. So bridging the past with the future so that the lessons and stories can go on and not be lost.
That was beautiful, Melanie. Anybody else?
Traditional ecological knowledge is a huge part of being aware of your natural environment. And when we're working with youth or adults, who are experiencing depression or suicidal ideation, being mindful of their own selves and how they're feeling and how their environment affects them around them, I think we all know is a coping skill. So bringing the ecological knowledge to them, it's kind of soothing and kind of like they have a sense of control and awareness because they have that knowledge base now. So it builds the confidence in them. And then also it builds their self identity as an Indigenous person.
So I just want to bring your attention to something in the chat. Melanie Stevens shared. She said an elder from King Island shared that they could find fresh water on the frozen sea by looking for raised ice that was clear at the top, could be taken and melted for drinking water because it no longer had salt in it. And in my culture, we also have several different names for salt to describe the different conditions of the ice. I mean, not salt, but the ice. We have several different names for ice, which describes the different conditions. So thank you for that comment.
Hi, this is Dana. I think TEK for our community, living in the city, being an urban Indian, we have to live in two worlds. And I think TEK really does support that, like Bessie said, that sense of self, that, increasing our identity, but also increasing our sense of belonging, that we do belong to this land. And, we have an obligation to be good stewards of it. And so it just kind of plays along with like these responsibilities as, youth are coming of age or, getting into these different age groups that they can, like I have this, sense of self, this, this stewardship that this role I have to take, and it gives them kind of like a job. Like, this is my job to be a good steward of the land, which, increases that, coping skill, like Bessie said, and increases those protective factors and their cultural protective factors, which is just awesome. So I love doing TEK, and we all do it on a daily basis, whether we know it or not.
Well, I think some people are doing it and they don't even realize it, right? They may be doing some projects right now and it could be TEK. Speaking of which, before I open the floor to participants, Marie or Allison, did you have any thoughts you wanted to share? I know you've done a lot of work with TEK.
Yes, thank you. I shared in the chat some a recent story that my aunt shared with me, and you're right. Those sorts of things aren't we don't think that we're doing it, but we are. It was funny because I just visited with my great aunt. She's lives alone and she's elderly, and she was it was nice to visit with her. I haven't spent much time with her lately, and she was sharing the story about I have it in the chat about picking berries and coming along a black bear that was picking with them, and I was like, wow, that I told her that. I said, that what they call that today, they call that traditional ecological knowledge. And she was like, that was a way of life. Like that was, my grandmother, my great grandma, I should say, her mom, um, didn't have a partner when she was in her older years. He had passed away. My grandpa had passed away very, very early on. And so she had to raise three children and come up with ways of, making an income. And that was one of them. They'd pick berries, and she later told me that as she was telling the story that they used to make jam and she would sell it or trade it. So um, make different, she would make a syrup with it as well. So um, yeah, just really, it's nice to hear all the different stories and all the sharing. And I know when you were sharing your story, Dana, about the Saskatoon berries, um, there's my husband's from Saskatchewan, so we used to go Saskatoon berry picking often when we lived up there. Um, and the kids looked forward to that. You know, there's the harvesting of our traditional medicines, you know, some of the common ones that are universal, like sweetgrass, you know, no, not overpicking and not taking it right out of the ground. We actually take it with scissors. We cut it with scissors in order for it to continue to grow, and be able to allow the growth to continue. So just beautiful. I love the topic of today. Hopefully we have you know, further interest to continue further work on this within our grants for our communities.
Thank you, Marie. Allison, did you have anything to share?
Just briefly, what I put in the chat, just someone made a comment a few moments ago that it's like when we share this knowledge with our youth, sometimes they don't think they have a connection to elders. They don't think they have a connection to culture, but it really is when we're practicing TEK, when we're sharing through stories or songs or tradition. It's like we are connecting them to that ancestral knowledge and we're grounding them so well. And they don't even recognize it. They don't realize the importance of it in that moment. And so I just want to say thank you to our panelists. I was very much appreciative. I am appreciative of your wisdom and your expertise in this area. And I look forward to learning more from all of you.
And I look forward to hearing from some of our participants now. Let's open the floor. What kind of traditional ecological knowledge, experience, or activities are you doing in your program now that you can share with us? I think Johnny, earlier in the chat box, if Marie, if you can capture that. Johnny, I don't remember the last name, shared a story
Yes,
about.
yes, let me find that. Johnny is one of my grantees. They're over with the American Indian Services in Santa Barbara. So let's see.
She's also welcome to open her mic if she'd like to.
Yeah, yeah.
You
have
can
the
jump
ability.
on, open up your voice, and we will let you into the program.
I'll give her a moment if she'd like to. Otherwise, I can read it. Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. It says, we incorporate TEK in the community facilitation of our Changing Tides healing model, specifically the cultural wisdom. Southern Tide, which are defined by 4 healing currents, facilitating the development of Indigenous identity and worldview, education and coaching of holistic wellness practices, coaching the personalization of spiritual practice, coaching in the future, continuation of wellness practices. And that is a beautiful presentation. We were able to share their Changing Tides healing model. We asked them to join us on a regional learning community as well as I believe it was the national learning community as well, Johnny. I believe we had you both share on both. And it's a beautiful presentation of how they incorporate this curriculum, and they also incorporate it within their youth GONA, their community GONA that they host annually. So beautiful. Thank you. American Indian Health and Services. Yes. Thank you, Barbara.
Anyone else, any other participants that care to share an experience or an activity that you've done that you would like to share with others? You know, I wonder, Marie, as I'm thinking before we jump to the last question, I'm wondering I would be interested to see any curriculum that's being developed on traditional ecological knowledge. And has anyone seen that? I've seen snippets of it, but I don't know if I have seen a full collection of Native American, Alaska Native curriculum on developing traditional ecological knowledge activities for prevention work. Dana, have you seen anything, or Bessie? So what did
I
you
have
learn
seen
today?
another agency created a traditional ecological knowledge curriculum, Save the California Salmon, but it has to do with salmon in the river. That's the only one I'm familiar with.
Something to look at. Anybody else? Oh, Christy Willeen is saying, love the idea of a go-in focused on tech. I love that. That's great. So as we
Yes, it was a
start to,
beautiful presentation, that particular one. They even shared, I think they shared at the California, Nevada, I'm sorry, the West Coast Regional Site Visit back when we were in Sacramento, and they did a presentation on this, and they shared how they would have a recipe starting for each day of the Gona of a drink that they could drink instead of, say, a pop or a sugary drink that would be a normal one for them, for others to go to. But it was a traditional type of drink, whether it be a tea or just using the medicines and teas around. So it was really, really interesting how they were able to do that, how they were able to incorporate both this healing model into their Gona, and just, yeah, definitely focused on the TEK for sure. We'll have to get them to share again.
wonderful, nice. So our last question today, did you learn something new today, or what was one takeaway from today? Please do share in the chat box, or you can come off off of mute and open up the line. Did you learn something new today, or what was one takeaway from today?
My takeaway is that
Bessie,
we gather nettle too, but I didn't know that it had so much protein. And I just love that about nettle. So that's my takeaway. Also the ice.
Nettle is one of the most nutritious plants that are out there. You could be totally vegan and get enough out of nettle to sustain your diet, as much so as if you were to eat just a regular carnivore, omnivore type diet. And I want to share something, how Bessie was talking about being connected with your environment, knowing the area and the different things and how plants can talk to you. And last summer was the first time that I found St. John's wort when I was out harvesting, and I was so excited. And I've never really seen it around. And this year, there is St. John everywhere I have gone in Washington. I'm thinking that Washington is on high anxiety and they all need to harvest it and start drinking some tea, because I have never seen so much St. John wort all over the place. And I'm like, I'm going to go get my scissors out and start snipping so that I can make some oils.
That's so true, right, Melanie? They always say what you need is already growing around you.
Right.
So I think all of us need to be drinking dandelion tea, because there's always so much dandelion, at least in my area.
Mm-hmm.
And I harvested some today because I don't treat my lawn. And then I have juniper berries. So yes, I found I have I think you and I were talking about this in our planning. I also have those Oregon grapes
Mm-hmm.
that are growing in my yard.
Oregon
Mullen.
grape oak makes a really good jelly. You just have to make sure you strain it because they have a lot of seeds, and it's kind of tart, so you can mix it with
Mm.
other berries, but it's also very nutritious for you.
Marie, did we capture any good things in the chat box?
Yes, we have some more here. The nutrition chart was amazing. The nutritional values of the various plants found in Alaska. Thank you all for sharing. We are working on building TEK into our workshops and events, and the information provided here was very inspirational. The comparison sheet that Melanie shared would be very useful. Thank you. And then Barbara shared, I used to work with AIHS, and so it was good to read how they are still doing such good work. Cameron shares, it was enlightening to see how much nutrition is in traditional foods. It's not only good for us culturally and spiritually, but physically as well. And it says, I'd appreciate the opportunity of a deeper training on TEK practices. Which choke cherries you leave in the seeds, as it has cancer fighting properties. Um, let's see. Our traditional medicine is all around us. Yes, yes.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Mark, go ahead and advance to the next slide. They will round out with some resources as well. Here's some tech activities. There are all kinds of things you can do. Sugar bush is something that they do up in your neck of the woods, don't they, Marie?
Yes, yes, we do.
Did you care to share? Does anyone not know what sugar bush is?
I don't.
Sugar bush is when they go out to harvest the sap out of the maple trees to make maple
Oh.
syrup. Yes, it's becoming a little bit of an uneasy time with these with the weather conditions because sometimes if it's not cold enough, it won't run well when in the processing of making the maple. Sometimes you might not get as much yield, or the taste will be a little bit different. But yeah, they do that all around here in my neck of the woods. Beekeeping.
And the carving driftwood into useful items, that's something I've seen Alaska Native young people do.
Mhm.
I was sitting with a whole group of very young youth who had FAS, and they handed them these sharp implements, and they were surrounding me with sharp implements, and then we all carved, and I thought, oh, this could be a problem. But as soon as they got a hold of the wood, all the youth, they just calmed down and they started carving masks and hooks for halibut fishing and all kinds of wonderful items. And that was a wonderful activity for them to do. So carving driftwood into useful items was another activity that could be done. Identifying plants, going on weed walks, harvesting, looking at the weather signs, the ocean tides, as Bessie was saying, making oils from bark, roots, leaves, and stems, understanding which is stronger of the plant, the leaf or the root. These are important pieces of knowledge that can be handed down to young people. They really need this. What woods are best to carve with or cook with. There's all kinds of information that so many things we could talk about in this conversation. Let's advance another slide and we're almost done. Mark, we'll bring it on home. Here's some additional traditional ecological knowledge resources for you to check out. And I wanted to mention the 13 moons, knowledge that has been almost lost. It could be brought back and shared with youth. I think they're thirsty for it. And if we could advance one more, Mark? Any questions or reflections on the conversation today before we close out? I think Mark can send out the resources page to everybody and we can share them with your GTAs. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for that. Any questions? Last call.
Anybody
All
that
right.
wants that chart, Sarah, they're more than welcome to get it. They can ask Mark and he can send it to them, or they can email me and I'll send it to them.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie.
You're welcome.
All right, Mark, let's advance the slide. There are some upcoming webinars in later July and August, healing and building protective factors. Be sure to join us then. And naming ceremonies and youth wellness, August 6th. We were racing through the summer, guys. It's a hot one. Next slide. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.